that's the tightener there. Okay, we'll adapt here as best we can. I was in my final semester working on my Master's of Science at California State University, Long Beach. And it had been a hard 3 years to get to that point where I was writing my thesis. I had worked 40 hours a week, and then I was taking usually a couple of classes in night school. And for the last 6 months, I had been spending 2 days a week, my 2 days off a week, at the university library researching materials and information for my thesis. Now remember, this was in the early 1970s when computers were these large rooms or large machines that filled a room, and you couldn't carry them in your hand. And a personal computer that finally came out was still very large and would sit on your desk in about 1973, and they cost $4,500 to $5,000. So research really couldn't be done at home, and the Google back then was really certainly non-existent. And so you had to have a book in your hand if you were doing research. It was at that point that I was going to miss a deadline with my thesis committee if I couldn't find what I needed. And after digging through the library card files, long before we had them on computers, one more time without finding what I wanted, I approached a librarian. I was feeling pretty stupid at that point and blurted out, "This is a dumb question." And before I could get the rest of my question out, the librarian interrupted me immediately and said, "No question is ever stupid, and you are not, or you would not be asking questions. You can only learn and discover something new by asking questions." His statement changed my life because I haven't forgotten that, and when I taught at Cal State Long Beach, I would always remind my students of that no question was ever stupid. To be open to self-knowledge and discover our true selves, we have to be open to newness. To be open to self-knowledge is to discover our true self. And that means that it only happens when we're willing to ask questions that move us to openness and honesty with ourselves. One of the first Ernest Holmes statements I learned or was introduced to, besides change your thinking, change your life, was be open at the top. And the direct quote is, "We have to keep our minds open at the top for a new influx of information, and we have to set up a sign which says, 'Stop, look, listen. Does this that I believe measure up to truth?'" Peter Ralston, in the book of Not Knowing, states, "To move toward enlightenment, you must begin with not knowing. Genuine not knowing is completely open state of mind that is always precedes the leap into the direction of consciousness and of conscious being." Our own mind and perceptions can keep us from experiencing who we really are and our true nature. Why do you think some of us prevent ourselves from exploring and having experiences of finding out who we truly are in life? What prevents us from doing that? Fear, absolutely. Fear is a biggie. Oh my gosh, I might find out something that I don't like. And of course, the other interesting part about it is, you know what Johari window is? Everybody know what Johari window is? Well, the Johari window it was created by a couple of psychologists, and they looked at and created a window with 4 boxes in it. And the 4 boxes stipulated, I know this about myself, and others don't know this. And then there was one that says, they know this, but I don't know this. And then down here was, they don't know it, and I don't know it. And over here was, I know it, and they know it. And it was like, this is how we are. We know things about ourselves in some respects, and in other respects, we don't. Any other thoughts about why we might not be willing to self-explore? Doubt?
Fear.
Fear, yep. Fear was mentioned. It's as though we're hiding from what is in plain sight, from who we are and what we can do. And as infants and small children, our minds are constantly working to figure things out. It's like, what's that food? Is it good? Does it taste bad? What is mommy doing now? Who's that man that just walked through the door? How do I stand on 2 feet? I can't get that one. Kaplop. And down we go. But based upon those experiences as small children, those beliefs, we begin to create beliefs in our life and in our existence and in our world. And those beliefs help us to survive as small children. Our beliefs from the early age become so entrenched within us in our conviction and belief that we lose our ability to be open at the top. Our knowing becomes like a closed circuit that will not let new information in. It's like we just take that little trap door that's open there and we just close it up and say, no more information. And in order to experience newness and be on that journey of self-discovery, we must be willing to ask questions of ourselves. And sometimes those questions are not real comfortable. It also means not looking at ourselves as stupid or dumb. It is accepting that there are things we do not know, and that does not make us dumb or stupid or even wrong. Our willingness to learn is only hampered by our resistance to change, our fear of looking stupid or not knowing what we should think about what is going on. Just like I was afraid to ask my question and proclaimed it stupid before I even asked. Not too long ago, I was sharing a personal story with someone, and her response came, "Why, I didn't know that about you." And I just looked at her and replied, "There's a lot you don't know about me." And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there was really a lot about myself that I still had to learn. This becomes more evident for all of us as we continue to grow spiritually. The more insights we have about ourselves and our beliefs, the more we realize how little we really do know. In the book of Not Knowing, Ralston points out that insight is more than having a good idea. To be in that place, in that space of learning or having insights about ourselves, it's up to us to participate in the effort. Nobody else can do it but us. No one else can have that experience. No one else can make the connections to our lives but ourselves. When self-learning transpires, genuine understanding really does occur. Insight is when we experientially become conscious of what is true for us personally. Ralston further defines insight as suddenly awakening in our consciousness when we realize something that is true and authentic. Self-discovery or discovery can be about our world, about our work, about our family, and most importantly, about ourselves. Insight will have 6 common qualities according to Ralston. Insights as an insight is true, or it will not really be an insight. An insight is not possible or simply an opinion or a guess about something. An insight is beyond our belief system that we currently have. It is instead something personally encountered and understood. An insight is self-validating for us. The truth or validation of the realization lies in what is learned and then realized by each one of us as it affects each one of us. An insight is authentic when there is no guesswork involved to it. When we have an insight, we personally grasp the lesson that is given. Not long ago, I was working with my spiritual mentor on the topic of judgment. I was really pretty upset with myself because I felt like I was letting too much judgment about others into my life. And she helped me to understand that there are two kinds of judgment. First, there's the spiritual kind that moves us to a higher understanding of others and ourselves. The second kind of judgment is really an accusation, according to Emma Curtis Hopkins. Our accusations are driven by fear, which you mentioned earlier. When we can see and understand what is happening in our own consciousness and be aware of what we are doing, and we know our accusations are driven by something then that we need to heal, that we need to peel out that fear to faith worksheet and take a stab at it so that we can clean it up. This is self-discovery. This is insight and knowing all rolled into one. Much like the science of mind has principles of self-discovery are fundamental principles also. Those principles empower our investigation of ourselves, our lives, and our reality. The four principles set the stage for true inquiry within ourselves. Without them, there would be no self-discovery, there would be no self-insight. So just what are those four principles that we must live by? Authentic experience. Honesty, especially with ourselves. Grounded openness and questioning. The principle of authentic experience provides a path or a direction for each of us to follow. It pushes us to be straightforward, truthful in every experience that we have, even the everyday, ordinary experiences. That means we don't pretend that something is true for us when it really isn't. My mother always had an issue with people who were overweight. So much so that she was always getting after me to eat less, eat more fruits and vegetables, which I detest, and to stop eating ice cream. For God's sakes, Eileen, don't take another bowl. At some point, I picked up the belief that I was big-boned. And that was why I was overweight. That was my truth. It wasn't my fault. I was born with these big bones. Of course, that is the farthest thing from the truth. But I wasn't able to admit it to myself until I lost 50 pounds when I was in college and realized, oh my God, those are little bones. It means releasing fantasies and personal beliefs and desires from all of our experiences. We want for ourselves what is personally true. It means letting go of hearsay and gossip. If you cannot validate something, then it's not true. Not too long ago, I was having a telephone conversation with my great nephew, who is 23 years old. He lives in Georgia, and he's at that age where he's still trying to figure some things out. And his belief was, we started discussing electric cars, and his belief was that electric cars were damaging the environment. What? You've got to be kidding me, was my immediate response. It seems as though he had heard on the radio, because he listened to talk radio as he drove to work, that they use diesel fuel to charge the charging stations for electric cars. Well, being right next to my computer, I immediately Googled the topic. By gosh, it was true. Sort of. The one exception, though, was a diesel-fueled generator had powered the charging station during a major storm in Australia that cut off all electricity for several days, and they had no other way to gas up the electrical cars. The talk station that he was listening to was implying that that was happening everywhere. Once again, I told him, double check everything before you share with another. We can discover the truth only when we're willing to set aside our personal beliefs, our personal agendas, and our perceptions. That means, too, in politics. In seeking answers, we so often only listen or read information that will support or validate our perspective, nobody else's. It's imperative that we commit ourselves to have authentic experiences that challenges our perspective of truth. Based on that observation, we can see how honesty is so important to our authentic experiences in self-discovery. Honesty is about aligning ourselves with what is already true. The only way we can do that is by being honest with ourselves and honest with others. That doesn't mean that we do not refashion something so it serves our needs. A simple question we can always ask ourselves is, what is actually so? A powerful experience is recognizing a personal limitation or a false belief. The third principle, grounded in openness, indicates that would you rather be defined as open-minded or closed-minded? Closed-minded people may be grounded, but they have a belief or a way of believing that works for them, and they are not budging from that belief. We cannot have truthful discovery when we refuse to explore alternatives. It's imperative that we stay in that place of being grounded so that we don't float with abstract concepts, but stay in reality. Being grounded by balancing is necessary, and constant activity we must do within ourselves as we explore, question, or seek our own truth. Henry Miller once said, "The moment one gives close attention to anything, even a blade of grass, it becomes a magnificent world in itself." When we question someone, or something rather, this is what truly is happening in our life. When we are grounded and open at the top, we're ready to ask the important questions and refocus. What is this activity? What is this experience? What is this thing? We know from A Course in Miracles that we're the only ones that give meaning to something. We give meaning to the chairs that we sit in, the house that we own, the car that we drive, the people that we know, the church that we go to. the importance of the process taught by Ralston is not about whether you discover, but rather that you engage in a process on questioning to discover what is really so in any situation for you personally. If I had not asked my mentor about judgment, I would never have learned about accusations and my own fear of being fat when I see people who are obese. In 2011, Congressman John Lewis attended the civil rights pilgrimage across Alabama that ended on Pettus Bridge that marked the 46th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And they took a bus back to the Montgomery airport for their flight home. Seated behind Lewis was one of my favorite authors, Parker Palmer. Anybody know Parker Palmer? He's one of my favorites. And he was sitting behind him, and he overheard him share a previous experience to his aide. In 1961, Lewis and a colleague were at a bus station in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Several young white men walked in with baseball bats and beat them profusely and bloody. Lewis and his friends did not fight back, nor did they press charges against the young men. They treated their wounds, got some rest, and then went on with their civil rights work. As Lewis did this for the rest of his life until he died a few years ago. In 2009, he was sitting in his office at Capitol Hill, and in walked an older man with his middle-aged son. He asked to see Congressman Lewis. "Mr. Lewis," he said, "my name is Elwyn Wilson. I'm one of the men who beat you in that bus station back in 1961. I want to atone for the terrible things that I did. So I came to seek your forgiveness. Will you forgive me?" Lewis said, "I forgave him. We embraced. He and his son and I wept together, and we talked." As Lewis came to the end of the story, he leaned back on his bus seat and he began to look out at the fields and the countryside that were once the killing fields for the Ku Klux Klan, which Elwyn Wilson was part of and belonged to. In a very soft voice, as if he was speaking to himself, Lewis said, "People can change. People can change." At that moment, Parker Palmer said, "It felt like I had seen into the soul of a true healer, a healer of the wounded heart of democracy. I saw Lewis with the faith in our shared humanity that kept him on the march all of those years, despite the abundant evidence that we're more capable of being unloving, unjust, and untruthful with each other and ourselves." When I heard John Lewis say people can change, I felt hope, not just for them, but for me. The knowledge that change is possible, both personal and social, can help us stay engaged with the daily demands of our life. When I was studying and researching today's Sunday lesson, I came across a poem by David White called "Start Close," and it's certainly applicable to all of us and to today's lesson. Start close in. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first close in, the step that you don't want to take. Start with the ground you know the pale ground beneath your feet, your own way to begin the conversation. Start with your own questions. Give up on other people's questions. Don't let them smother something simple. To hear another voice, follow your own voice. Wait until that voice becomes an intimate, private ear that can really listen to another. Start right now to take a small step. Take a small step you can call your own. Don't follow someone else's heroics. Be humble and focused. Start close in. Don't mistake that other for your own. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first. Close in. And take the step you don't want to take. So start close in, ladies, and seek your truth within, one simple step at a time. This is the truth in my life. This is the truth in yours. And so it is. Amen.